No one more, and then we'll just go in on our own again. No one. Oh well. So the thing about going in with someone, it raises your XP. The XP you can get, but if I can't find anyone, I can't find anyone. I know exactly what Amy's gonna do. We are not going to be working on the exercise yet. They're gonna overhear it, but not work on it yet. I'll explain in a minute. Okay. Coronavirus is still coming. Amy's the owner of a company that does employee wellness. So we're gonna overhear an American with EDS talking with her. Are you there? I just want to check because it says I'm down to 0 viewers. Okay, just making sure. I don't know what Twitch is doing then. Amy overhears an American talking about, what do you call it? About employee wellness and her EDS with, while they're at the spa. So that we learn a little bit about it. But then when coronavirus hits, she wants something that'll motivate her employees to stay healthy. Maybe they talk about it before, but they don't really develop a full workout everything, just a little bit here and there. And then coronavirus hits, and Amy feels she wants her employees to stay healthy. Part of it being some of her employees, not all, but some of her employees are werewolves. And where it may not affect the wizarding world and people who are magical, and it may not even affect werewolves, I haven't decided that yet, she's going to be mindful of it. Hi, the real salties! And so she's gonna want to, so she'll create a So that'll motivate her even more to create a full workout type plan. I'm glad. I enjoy it. So if you want to go by the book I'm writing, that means both of you are magical. So what I'm writing is a kind of a Harry Potter spin-off. So it's 2019. Wizards Unite is real, which also means everything that happened in the book is real, except for they've gotten one thing wrong. And that one thing that they've gotten wrong is the fact that werewolves, actually, the only werewolves they talk about in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and in all the other books are rogue werewolves. But there are packs of werewolves. And if you're in a pack, it changes a lot of things. So basically, real werewolves, when they're in a pack, one, they can shift whenever they want. Unless the alpha prohibits them from as a punishment, but he always makes sure that what I'm going to talk about in a minute is taken care of, and allows them to shift often enough to prevent what causes them to go rogue. But they can shift where and whenever they want, but they retain their humanity, I guess is the best way of putting it. They don't chase after people to bite them, or in fact, in Amy's pack, it's if you bite someone without having talked to them first and them wanting to join the pack, which is very hard to do anyway, and I'll explain the only way that happens in just a minute. But if you do that, if you force someone to join the pack, you can be kicked out of the pack, or force someone to become a werewolf. You can be kicked out of the pack, which can cause you to become a rogue. But no one wants to, having been in a pack, no one wants to be, most people do not want to become a rogue. So they wouldn't ever do anything to do that. In fact, the pack runs around on the full moon trying to protect everyone that isn't in their pack from being made into a werewolf. So their pack also, though, has stayed hidden from the outside world. They pretend to be regular people. They stay hidden from the outside world, so you can't just go up to someone and tell them about being a werewolf. The few times it does happen and is allowed, when the alpha has to give permission for you to, but it's because you've fallen in love with someone who's not a werewolf, and it's getting really serious, and you're probably going to end up marrying them. At that point, because it is such a big portion of your life, the alpha will generally then give permission for you to tell them about werewolves. But that's the only time. So very few people are made werewolves. Their pack is mostly people who were born being a werewolf. The children are, so there's that. And that's part of the reason he waits until it's really, really serious. Basically, they have to make sure that the relationship is strong enough that it can withstand finding that out, that they love each other enough that rather than run, they either want to become a werewolf or still want to stay with them. I will say part of what they tell them, though, and talk to them about, is that it's not the way it's portrayed, that they aren't a danger when they're shifted or anything, unless they're a rogue. So, anyway, so this person who was born a werewolf is also born magical. And our main character is born a werewolf, but is born magical and is set to go to Hogwarts. What actually makes a rogue act the way they are is the stress of only shifting at the full moon just drives them crazy. And so just that itch to shift and go for a run and whatever just drives them crazy. And so that's what causes the danger in a werewolf. And our main character is actually working with Harry and Hermione and a few others to change the views of the wizarding world. I did not mean that. I was checking that. That's what I thought. So, that's what the book's about. It kind of... So the way I write is I'm a discovery writer. So I don't necessarily know what's going to happen until it happens. It was originally going to be, as Orca Jade said, 92. We're at 92 pages. It was originally going to be a short story. I thought you'd come in before and seen it, but maybe not the real Salty. And yes, the way I describe it varies from time to time. All of it's true. It's just, it's such a big story that Yes, we love finding out what's happening with Amy. Ooh, you know what, Orchid Jade? What if it's a card game? Our exercise routine. Would you be interested? Would you play something like that? Okay. Just wanted to check. It would be a solitaire game, obviously. But with the chance of maybe we can do like a D&D type where you can then access it or where there's a way you can play virtually, like have people from across contact someone and okay, I'm playing this card and you know whatever. We'll see. Because a card game would be really easy to put modifiers in. That could modify based on the needs of the chronic illness. So like diabetics would be required to take a second every so often and double check their blood sugar, and to make sure at the beginning that they were properly that their blood sugar is at the right level to exercise. Sorry, not gonna answer you. I know you're my doctor, but definitely even more reason not to answer you while I'm live streaming. They'll have to leave a message. I think it's probably that they may have come up with an idea for me. So we're looking at trying out a different pancreatic enzyme. One that my insurance will cover. That's why they're calling. No, I can guarantee that that's not why they're calling, is just to chat. He doesn't ever call just to chat. They do sometimes call, if one of my kids had something scheduled, they might call. But not just to chat. My doctor, now male, yeah, whatever, so you got to take that into account, but is a gem. A diamond, whatever you want to call it, is rare. He's a PCP, primary care physician, that will actually diagnose EDS and do a lot of the treatment for it. Which is so rare it's not fair. In fact, he does everything in his clinic that our professional EDS clinic does, but our professional EDS clinic has a 2 to 3 year wait and to get seen the first time, and then your next appointment is scheduled a year down the road. He is amazing. When we could not figure out for years, we had this problem or that problem or whatever, and it was not known exactly what was going on, he encouraged us to not give up finding answers. Yeah, it's years for the intake appointment, and then a year after that for the follow-up, where you get all your results and everything else, and they start doing treatment, and no one knows. I haven't heard what after that it is. And that was actually part of what pushed him to start doing what he did, to find out what treatments they do and everything. Because when we first got diagnosed, he felt my son needed help now, not down the road. So he contacted the main person in charge and said, okay, what do you do? And started doing it himself. To make sure we received the treatment we needed. And the more he learned, the more he then said he found out that other people he worked with had similar issues. I hate to say it though, but a lot of times hearing from people in Canada and the UK the struggles they've had, I wouldn't want the healthcare you guys have, which may sound bad, but some of it is great, but some of it actually, in Canada, the wait to get seen is about as long. to get the EDS diagnosis. And no doctor will treat you as though you have EDS until you've been seen by them and got the diagnosis. And then they refuse to follow the scientific papers that say how to diagnose and have made their own diagnostic criteria. Like literally they are saying, we don't care that about the international diagnostic criteria for EDS. We don't believe in that. It doesn't matter that it's the international scientific diagnostic criteria. We're going to make our own criteria. And to me, that is as bad or worse. That you have to wait months, or that you have to wait that long to get in to get seen. And then they have their own diagnostic criteria that they follow anyway, so you can't even have a good idea if you'll get diagnosed or not. Now that's Canada, that's not the UK, but there's that. The UK, a lot of people are saying they struggle to get their doctors to refer them to the specialists they need. Really, what everyone's asking is that they just follow the checklist. That a primary care, your general practitioner could and should be the ones to diagnose EDS, and the only ones send on to specialists are those who have extra needs. Once you're in the system and you've jumped through all the hoops, I've heard it's a lot better. But getting through those hoops in the first place can be a pain. Some people in the UK are being told they need to have a skin biopsy to find out if they have hypermobile EDS. To diagnose hypermobile EDS. But HEDS, there is no testing. There is no test other than the criteria. So they're literally even there going against the scientific criteria. So I think there's good and bad about every type of healthcare system. And the thing is, the places the bad show up are going to be in the more unusual circumstances because there's fewer people in those, so fewer people fighting the fight. And I'll give you that. Some people here, and I feel bad for them, and this is why I love my doctor. Here in the US, they go to their primary care, and they ask about it, and their primary care says, okay, I'll refer you to maybe to rheumatology, let's say. And they go to the rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist says, I don't diagnose EDS. I have nothing to do with it. You need to go to a geneticist. So they go back to their primary care and they get their referral to a geneticist. And they go to the geneticist, and the geneticist says, I don't have anything to do with EDS. You need to go to a rheumatologist. And they say, but I've already been to a rheumatologist. He told me I need to go to you. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with genetics. You need to go to, it's all rheumatology. And they argue, the doctors argue back and forth and whatever else, and they can never get to anyone to diagnose them and do the things that should be being done, because no one will admit that they're the ones who should be diagnosing. And yet then you get other people like my doctor who are amazing, their primary care or rheumatology or genetics or whatever, and they do their job. Because really, any doctor out there can diagnose EDS. Any doctor. Yeah. It's the case of no one wants to be the one to take responsibility. It doesn't matter that it's as simple as, here's how all they have to do to diagnose, okay? I'm literally going to go through the steps. They put that in, and they get to this site. They hit here, they hit EDS and HSD info, they hit the let's see. Diagnostic criteria. And the diagnostic checklist. I just want to look at this. Okay, that just means they're working on it. Okay, so here, diagnostic criteria, HEADS diagnostic checklist. Yeah, you can do it all yourself. I literally, and then you go through the checklist. And that's all you do. And if they meet the criteria, they meet the criteria, you give the diagnosis. That's why it frustrates me. It's black and white, no questions asked. It is or it isn't. And yet people aren't even willing, many doctors aren't even willing to go that far. And that's what frustrates me. I mean, there are no people who have been known to literally carry that in with them. completely filled out. Show the doctor the whole thing. They say, you're right, according to this checklist, you have it, but I won't diagnose you. You literally just diagnosed me, but you won't put it in your notes? And then the doctors go so far as to say, some of them will say, well, I don't ever diagnose because it could cause you problems with healthcare in the future. Or this reason or that reason, and they give all these crappy answers. Some of them, it's because you'll have trouble getting health insurance in the future. Some of it because some people have literally gone through that and then said, but EDS doesn't really exist. It's just a fad diagnosis. It doesn't even exist. Exactly. You're a doctor. It's your job. It's been scientifically proven. There's scientific, it's science. That it exists, etc., etc., etc. But no, it's the new ADHD, which doesn't exist either. And ADD. So I will say one thing about EDS is you won't necessarily, depending on when it's caught, you may not need any treatment other than preventative care, as in making sure everything's in place, your muscles are working right, whatever else. Like literally, and some of them say, well, kids are all hypermobile anyway, so you can't diagnose them. But literally the tests that they put in that checklist are such that it overcomes that barrier. And if a kid can do it, they've got HEDS. If a kid meets the criteria, they've got HEDS. But they won't diagnose, some won't diagnose them young, some won't ever diagnose, etc., etc., etc. Sorry, you got me on my soapbox. I'm trying to calm down. That's why I'm spinning around and around and around. Exactly. Now you understand why I'm so vocal about EDS and trying to help people become aware of the truth about EDS. Yes. There are people out there who literally say EDS is not real. Doesn't matter what those of us who have lived through it say, and who live with it say. They literally claim it's all in people's heads. Understand why I say it's my soapbox. And the worst part about it is, okay, I could see it if it was like, or to some degree I could see a parent, or, you know, if it was a lay person. But there are doctors who literally say that. Yeah, exactly. And actually what they say is, no, the PT actually isn't putting your bones in. He's just faking it. And he's not doing you any good. You need to quit going to PT and just move on with your life. And you aren't in pain. I don't care that you're about ready to bawl, and you don't usually, and you went through, like, you're in so much pain, you're ready to bawl and scream and everything else, and you went through labor without any pain relief. Trust me. Luckily, I have not had to... Well, let me take that back. Since we got a diagnosis, I have not dealt with that. They literally, my son was buckled over in pain for 3 months, and everyone tried to tell him he didn't know what he was talking about. And I was going, this is the kid that broke his foot bouncing on a tramp and was laughing and smiling and everything. And, you know, was just normal, other than to tell me it hurt. But even the doctor mentioned that he wasn't acting as bad as he was. This is and I had another son. He literally broke his foot in the worst place possible, and they thought he just sprained it. Luckily, they did x-rays because they caught it immediately. But, and, oh, you guys just have a high pain tolerance. For goodness sake, why do you think we have a high pain tolerance? And the kid who broke his foot in the place that hurts the most, you've heard him on the stream. He's the one that was coming in, having me have to massage him after working for a little while because he was in so much pain. He could break his foot in the worst way possible, and he was not crying, and he comes in saying he's in pain, and just from working, and yet yet this kid couldn't have EDS, according to some people. And thank you. It's just, that's what people with EDS in some places have to deal with. It's also why, and I'm going to reiterate what I said, my doctor is a gem. He believed my son when he was the only one of all the doctors to believe my one son, who was in pain for had stomach pain for 3 months straight, almost straight. The only doctor. And it was actually a couple years later, the same son was having back pain and everything else, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And he actually went to our children's hospital here, that's a major children's hospital. I tell my doctor I love him all the time, so does my PT. But went to a major children's hospital, and they said he doesn't have arthritis, but it's something similar, but we don't know what it is. Because we thought he had psoriatic arthritis. He got in with my PT, my rheumatologist. My rheumatologist was with him maybe 5 minutes and said, he's got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. A week later, my diagnosis was changed from psoriatic arthritis to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that's what caused my doctor to start researching. And when we found out that the pain that my son was going through years before had been likely due to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. We also found out that most of my son's asthma attacks, since then we found out, it would always attack his upper airway and not his lower. And he'd have to use a nebulizer to get out of pain. Well, we've since found out his ribs were shifting out of place every time he had an attack. It wasn't even an asthma attack at all. But yeah. So and now he's able to get, he's getting the treatment he needs and whatever. But you can see why the frustration. And this is something that people with EDS have to deal with, and why I love my doctor to death is I can call him up and say I'm in pain, and he says, okay, I believe you. And he knows we aren't just drug seeking. The number of people that with EDS that go to a ER because they've slipped something, they don't know what, and they're literally in so much pain that they can't function. And they're labeled for drug-seeking behaviors, when sometimes they aren't even asking for pain relief, is frustrating. When they literally, there have been people who have gone into the ER, said, I do not, and the doctor's like, well, what do you want? Do you want morphine? Do you want this? No, none of those work. All I want is, tell me, how is that a indication that someone's trying to get drugs to sell, or they're addicted to drugs, when they're literally turning down every offer of pain relief you give them and just begging for an x-ray? I'll tell you who's important enough. My doctor. Because he was willing to take the time to stop and learn about it first. And he doesn't, and so he realizes it's real and will not tell someone it's all in their head. And he doesn't do the he works with each person based on their individual needs and what is manifesting at the time. It's not just, oh, it's all in your head, I'm going to send you to a shrink, or things like that. It's, let's get to the bottom of what the problem is and treat the problem at its root source. Exactly. But it's frustrating, the number, and I have not lived with as much of this, I'm going to be honest, because I have a pain tolerance that's through the roof, generally. And my family all has, a lot of us all have EDS. They aren't diagnosed, but looking at them. And so it's something that's just, well, you just deal with it in my family. That's kind of how it's been passed down. But as I've gone on to learn more about EDS, I hear these stories, and it just makes me want to cry for them as I hear of these things happening. And so basically, whenever I go anywhere healthcare related, I'm trying to educate. And we've actually been able to educate a lot of people around us as to EDS, and I'm hearing less and less of those types of stories. They're being taken. Yeah, they're still watching for drug-seeking behaviors, and I totally have no problem with that. But they're taking a step back and reviewing, what is it really a drug-seeking behavior that we're seeing? Or are we seeing someone in pain trying to receive treatment for whatever the pain is? And that's what's so frustrating. I will be honest. And why I try to educate. Huh?
It's addressed to you.
Just a minute.
Before I put it in recycling.
Oh. Yeah, it's recycling.
I know. I just thought I'd give you a laugh before I put it in recycling.
Okay. Anyway. I don't get what I'm laughing at, but...
That they send you.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to do what I can to educate. I'll be honest. And that's why I'd like to get the app out there, because I think it would help make it easier to, in places, times like that, to be able to pull it out and say, and show them. Because another thing that happens is, if we continuously are showing the different moves that prove we have EDS, it can actually cause further damage. So if we are able to do it and show the video proving we have EDS, or the pictures proving it, it can make a huge difference to quality of life. Being able to pull up to have all of your medical history, everything there, plus reminders and whatever else, and just that's why the app to me is so why I'd like to get the app developed. But I have had people, and I will be honest, I've had people, well, you should be working. You're just being lazy. Not my doctor. Let me make that very clear. But people who think that my doctor, who have literally to some degree claimed, my doctor has no clue what he's talking about. I should be at work. Who cares what your doctor says? You aren't in that much pain. Or your doctor's asking for unreasonable accommodations. And they're unreasonable not because we wouldn't give this to someone who, yeah. And they can be the same accommodations they'll give to someone with an obvious handicap or things like that. But for me, it's unreasonable because it's not an obvious. Those are some of the things that happen. And it's why, one, information about EDS needs to spread more. 2, the claim of doctors that it would affect health and life insurance, I think would be diminished, or would be basically null and void if testing was done as soon at kindergarten. Exactly. And my doctor and I have talked about it, and we think it would be wonderful if the Brighton scale was run as part of the kindergarten, all the tests they run for kindergarten, the kindergarten assessments. That's what I'm after. Exactly. If we could get the basic checklist, the simple parts run, or of the EDS diagnostic criteria run in kindergarten as part of the kindergarten assessment, and then if you appeared that it might be possible you have it, you get referred to your doctor for further to look into it further. Children could be caught in kindergarten, and the PE and things could be set in place to help them throughout school, and to help prepare their bodies better for EDS throughout their life, to reduce the chance of issues in the future. Yeah, exactly. 1, more people would be known to have it. 2, it would raise awareness of it. 3, if they started daily exercise in the appropriate ways, in kindergarten or before. But in kindergarten, or as you know, the sooner you can get on it and start that, the less chance of, 1, dislocating things, because you're in that habit of keeping the muscle strengthened, and so then you can be taught to keep the muscle balance good enough that you won't have a lot of the issues that come from dislocations and whatever. It won't eliminate issues, but it would reduce the number of issues. And then the reason for the other issues could be looked into further, and that's where research could go, instead of going into how do we, yeah. And it just would be better for the world, honestly, because you'd have a lot of people who would prevent a lot of the suffering and disability that currently comes, because people, sadly, with EDS, the average amount of time from the first major dislocation or major symptoms until diagnosis is 10 years. And I'm not saying minor. They've lived with stuff their whole life. But from major. So, like, for me, it was, let's see, probably my RA, or my psoriatic arthritis diagnosis, which would have been possibly, you could actually, my cause for my hysterectomy probably was the first one. That was in 2010, and we were diagnosed, I think, 3 years ago, so that would be 7 years, but I don't know if that would have raised red flags. My psoriatic arthritis diagnosis was about 2 years later. So, for me, it was about 5 years. For my son, it was about 3 years. And we're on the lower end of that's the lower end. There have been people that it's 20 or more years. And I hate to say it, but that applies in the UK as much as it does in the US. That's an average worldwide. Because people do not know what they're looking for. People don't understand EDS, whatever else. Some doctors still believe there's a look and you have to be a thin, tall, lanky to have EDS. To me, it's just sad, and if we could change that, every person that hears about it is, like, if everyone that knew about it were to educate one other person, and then of course there would be those who get the chance to educate more than one person. Eventually word would get around. And my hope is, honestly, one, that I can do something to help make people with EDS's lives better, hence the desire to create an app. 2, the more people we can educate, the better. And especially, I hate to say it, after the shutdowns with COVID, people with EDS, there's probably going to be more people that have undiagnosed EDS starting to have problems. Because of the number of people that were stuck in their houses for as long as they were. A lot of muscle deterioration, things like that happened. And problems are going to start happening as people go back to work. So, I'm debating what to do. We have 2 more wormtail and 3 more James Potter foundable fragments. And then would have a lot to do, but these fragments don't want to show up. We've been live almost 3 hours, but that's not bad. I will say, though, to some degree it's made some differences that are beneficial. People understand more what it's like to be stuck inside, to not be able to go do the things they may want to do. And things like that. So the only reason I brought it up is if we could finish today, that would give us actually all week to the rest of the week for Orca and art. But these don't seem to want to show up to allow us to do that. But yeah, so COVID ended up being a good thing and a bad thing for people with EDS. And who knows? That's kind of where it stands. Is it could end up being amazing, but it could end up being horrible. I'm gonna go after one of these just because I'm bored. But yeah, that's my feeling on things. And you can see why I say it's my soapbox. There's a lot of other things I keep my mouth shut on, and I just let people believe what they want to believe and whatever else. Obviously, I struggle with that with EDS. Not a problem. I just, honestly, as I told you, the more people that know, the more people that can be aware and help raise awareness. And maybe down the road, with the hope that down the road, thank you, Orca. Maybe down the road sometime, with the hope that down the road, sometime there will come a time when that doesn't happen. But the only way we'll reach there is if people know about EDS. So when I was growing up, and I'm gonna be honest, when I was growing up, ADD was what some doctors call the fad diagnosis. A lot of people were being diagnosed with it, etc. It wasn't very well known. I could go on and on. Nowadays, if someone says they have ADD or ADHD, people are like, okay. And it doesn't faze them. When I was growing up, if someone said they had ADD or ADHD, or people would not, you would never tell your employer or your friends you had ADD or ADHD if you could help it at all. You kept quiet about it, etc., because it was something to be ashamed of. Obviously, in 20 years, that's changed. People now know about ADD and ADHD, and they accept a lot of those different things that come with it. And they know how to deal with it, and you're just seen as a regular person that may have a bit more trouble concentrating and may get distracted easier and a few things like that. But it's nothing to be ashamed of. And etc. And hopefully 10 or 20 years down the road, maybe that'll be the case for EDS. But you say you have EDS and people are, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't go quite as far on our hike. Or when you call up and say, you know what, I've used all my spoons for today, they say, okay, that's fine. And maybe what can we do to help you? Rather than looking down on you for having to cancel, and where PT is just an accepted, okay, you need to go to PT today. How'd your PT appointment go? And whatever else. And that it's an accepted part of healthcare. Sounds good, Kid Chasma. That worked. We went after the acromantula and things started showing up. They aren't the ones we need, but they're showing up. Yeah. And now it's more seen as, at least from my experience, it's more seen as, okay, they may act up, but it's not them trying to be naughty. It's just part of who they are. And that there's ways you can help them. And so maybe one day it'll hit the point where you have a handicap placard on your car and someone sees you walk in the grocery store and they can't see the disability, but they acknowledge, but rather than claiming that you're faking it to get the handicap placard, they're like, okay, and treat you like normal. Like a normal person. Or they find out you're on disability, but they can't see the disability, and they say, hey, that's fine. Or where doctors don't have to struggle to get someone with EDS on disability, instead that it can be, they can say, okay, they've got EDS, but also it causes extra issues because of it. Or possibly where EDS generally does cause increased healthcare costs, that it can be like it is with cystic fibrosis in some states, that it automatically means you're put on Medicaid. So you get extra help with your medical costs without having to deal with with a genetic condition, which means that you need some extra help to be on the same page as everyone else. But that's down the road. And until then, all we can do is raise awareness. I may have to go soon. I don't know if I've slipped a rib or what. That's why I was sounding like I was. Is I laid down for a bit over something to see if it would pop it back in, or if it would stop the pain, and it's kind of playing with me. But I'm gonna go for a little bit longer. We'll see, because it seemed to help a little bit, but I did lay down for a little while. That's why I started sounding a little bit different. I was trying to pop it in. But that's also, I will say, part of the EDS is, okay, it doesn't want to pop in. Well, there's not much I can do. I may as well keep going on with life. You got to remember, we've you got to remember that I've slipped things from the time I was little with no idea I was slipping things. If you saw how far I can step on the side of my foot, you would freak out. And it's because I'd be walking down the road and sprain my ankle. Well, I sprained it once, and after that, the muscles never could compensate for it enough. But if we don't get things showing up soon, I probably will go, and we will finish tomorrow, it looks like, hopefully. Just I kind of really wanted to try and finish today, with the hope that if I could finish today, we could do everything the rest of the week, including tomorrow. Looks like Kid Chasm accidentally pocket typed again. I talked to him yesterday, I think it was, on his stream, or not yesterday, Saturday on his stream, and he had no clue he'd typed in the stream other than just to say he was gonna lurk, and I just kind of laughed. He gets busy, but he keeps it in his pocket as a support, or so that he can support. And sometimes it decides it wants to help to continue supporting even more by making sure I'm seeing something to respond to and have something to talk about. Oh, we're so close. Come on. I don't think I mentioned in here. I did on my board, but I get that. I did on my board, but I didn't mention it in my on my stream. I figured out some of the reasons I'm having some of the issues I was having, and it was I have one pill that I take, that one of my more important pills that I guess I ran out of when I filled my pill containers up last, because what I do is I fill up I can't even remember what they're called, but you know, your daily pill things. I fill those up so I don't have to have a ton of bottles I'm opening up every day. And I guess one time when I filled it up, I ran out at the end of it. And I I probably put the bottle on the bed or somewhere to go get a new bottle, thinking I'll get it, or I thought I'll get it before I fill it up again. I won't forget. And I forgot. And I just kept filling it up with what I had there. And then Saturday, I guess it was Saturday afternoon, I was thinking about it and I went, wait a minute. Or I was doing stuff and I realized I hadn't taken it for a while. And I went and got it and I started on it again. But it was like, oh crap. And that's one hard thing about Twitch is sometimes we get to know fun people, but they're only on at times when we should be sleeping because it's worldwide, but then they come and support us, or maybe we can't, or maybe we're at work when they're streaming, different things like that. And so it becomes, yeah. But the nice thing is if you can't, if you have a time you can't sleep or this or that, you can always find something to distract yourself. Which for people with EDS can be huge, because I can be in pain and someone I like comes on and I can forget about the pain because I'm busy watching them play and communicating with them and whatever, and so I can forget about the pain. Come on, we only need 3 more James Potter. Exactly. And I will try and remember to upload to YouTube every so often, and I will try and get a playlist together. Sometime. So that you can come in and see more, but whether I'll try to remember. I'm not promising. I need to sometime go through and do that again. One thing I'm hoping is that getting back on this medicine, maybe my brain will start kicking in more and I won't need as much sleep. And if that happens, I may kind of pull away from Twitch a little bit. As in, I will not just sit here watching mindlessly, but I'll try to watch like yours and Jess's and Kid Chasma. Those would be ones I'd put a priority on. Try to catch Professor Oakwood at least once a week, every week or two. And maybe, some of them catch them off and on. but try and figure out a schedule to maybe even try again to program and see what happens. Okay, nothing is showing up again. So let's do this. Trying to figure out who's live. I have an idea of who we're gonna raid. Oh, you know what? I have someone we have not raided in a long time. Okay, I'll ask. We have Angel Goddess, who's a good friend of mine that's almost never on, or we have Crafting with Ray. And Angel Goddess is doing just chatting. Well, Crafting with Ray, I know, is doing her... How about we'll raid Angel Goddess, but be aware Crafting with Ray is on. And maybe people can also go support both of them. I will... do that to make it so that people who may be interested can find her easier. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we will be able to find those last 3, and then we'll be able to finish the bonus event tomorrow. We will see you tomorrow. Bye. Let's see. Get the raid going. Just wait for the raid to come through. I appreciate you stopping by. I honestly wouldn't even stop now since you were still here. But I think I'm hitting the point my own body is saying I have to. So I will talk to you later. Bye.